Thank you for coming again on another Friday to do something which I think is exciting. We have dialogues on Fridays. Sometimes we have Thursdays. No, I think on Fridays. And we have today, we have lots of things going on. This is a very special Friday. It's a very special event. It's an event that honors our female colleagues, our staff, our faculty, our female students. And that's an important thing. And I'd like to talk just briefly, without latching into politics, why that's important. First of all, I know that you don't have enough time to keep up with current events, but anybody follow the Baylor women?
Yeah.
Like 40 straight wins? 40 straight wins. Now, just to put this in perspective, when I was in high school, okay, I know it was a long time ago, but women were not allowed to run the full court. You got 3 in the back court, 3 in the forecourt, and the 3 in the back court couldn't go to the forecourt. You know why? Because we knew that they couldn't go that far. They'd get tired. Now, I'm convinced that women did not make that rule. Bob? If they had been given the choice to make the rule, they probably wouldn't have made it. And that's what I'd like to mention today for a moment. This is true that this is about honoring our colleagues, and we're going to be doing that with some awards later, and with this fabulous lecture that I'm really looking forward to. But I also want us to think briefly about, and think back, all of you, think back about the choices that you've made, and about the times in your life when you did not think that you had a choice. When you said, well, you know, they kind of decided that for me. Now, when I was Associate Dean at the University of Texas, I had some female colleagues I admired. They could do things I couldn't do, and I admired them. And one of the things that came up early in their career was decisions were made for them. They said, you know, well, she has 3 kids at home. You know, we don't want to put her on tenure track because because it's too hard for her to balance family and career and higher career and higher education. My argument at that time, and I finally won, but it took me 5 years to do it. My argument was that's their choice. That's their choice to make, not our choice to make. True, as administration, believe it or not, I mean, the faculty will probably know, I don't know about that. As the administration, my colleagues, Maria, Clifton, Gary, Patty, Saeed, we actually do try to not make decisions for the faculty, but we try to support them. But we try not to make the decisions for them, and I guess that's what's something I'd like you to think about. Now, another part of this annual event is to talk a little bit, or to think a little bit about the importance of diversity. I just got back from a conference. It was our 4th Building Partnerships in Architectural Education Conference. We held it at Del Mar. The coordinator of the Del Mar program that's in Corpus Christi is a tech grad, Laura Bennett. She's doing a great job remaking that program. We had people from Abilene Christian. We had people from UT Brownsville. We had representatives from El Paso Community College. We had people who have been part of that from Angelo State, from Tarrant County Community College, Doñana and Las Cruces. It really covers architectural education on the western half of Texas and part of New Mexico. And it's been something we've been working on for 6 years. And one of the reasons why it's important, these are what I might call pre-architecture programs. Half of the people who participate are community colleges. And one of the reasons why I think this is important is because it relates directly to diversity. Now, there's the diversity we talk about all the time. When we started working on our program in El Paso, the ethnic diversity of this college was around 17%. About the same as the university right now. It was 34% in 6 years. It's 40% now. Now, why is this just a political goal? It's not, because actually underneath that there's another kind of diversity that I'd like to mention. It's not just about representing populations. It's about representing people by giving more people a choice. If we give more people a choice to become a part of designing the built environment, we are adding to the sophistication of the built environment. We are making a better world. So this day represents those goals. Recognizing the ability of all of you to be able to make choices. That's what this country is all about. Now, on a lighter note, I'm really delighted to first I'm delighted that Winka's here. I think that's great. I mean, you have to fly a good distance to get here. A couple of stops, I'm sure. And so I'm delighted with that. I'm really thankful for our sponsors. I'm going to read them off. Kathy G. Johnson of Houston and a 1977 graduate, and Elaine Rogers, who's president of Rogers and Moore Engineers in Houston and an 83 graduate. I'm grateful for United Supermarket, providing some of the goodies out there, and I'm also thankful to Kathy B. Johnson, our Director of Development and Institutional Advancement, our CEO, who has managed to bring a lot of resources to the table to do this kind of event and other events. So at that point, I'd like to turn it over to Dana. Thank you.
And I think I'll use a microphone. I don't think I can project as well as you were able to do. Mine is real simple. I just have some thank yous that I want to make. And to begin with, I want to thank the College of Architecture for the fact that they have supported this event for the last 4 years. This is our 4th year. And then also be able to thank the faculty and the students who participated by nominating and by voting for our outstanding woman architecture student this year. We couldn't have it without you participating. Also, I want to thank the nominees themselves for the work that they've done over the last few years and for providing the exhibit that we have. It's been nice. And then finally, I do want to say with deep appreciation, thank you to the women who made up this year's committee. And those are our Associate Professor, Lahib Jado, our Director of Development for the College of Architecture, Kathy Johnson, our visiting assistant professor, or one of our visiting assistant professors, Victoria McReynolds, Assistant to the Dean and Director of Academic Programs, Patricia Perkins, and Associate Professor and Chairperson of Instruction, Chair of Instruction, Maria Pergolini, and then our Administration Assistant in the Dean's Office, Stephanie Jones. They put in a lot of time, effort, enthusiasm, great ideas, and did it because they actually believe that this is a very worthwhile thing. Our major goal is that at some point in the future that this will be an event that we don't have to have, but there's no reason to put any particular focus on women in architecture because we're simply so present that it's not through omission that we don't notice that they're around. So thank all of you for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here. I see a lot of female and male students, which is what we actually were looking for. I have the immense pleasure, really, to introduce our guest speaker, Winka Dubbeldam. We know each other since 1997. We met in New York City. We both have somehow our path crossing Peter Eisenman office. And since then, we observe each other's career. And with great support and respect, we kept in touch. And once in a while, we talk about it, our professional life. Winka Dubbeldam is the principal of Architectonics, is a firm in New York City, was founded in 1994, but she also has Architectonics in Netherlands, in Holland, in Europe. She has a master's degree from the Academy of Architecture in Rotterdam and a second master from Columbia University in New York City. She has lectured extensively and taught at the master programs of Columbia University, Harvard, Cornell, and many other schools, and currently holds the position of director of the post-professional program at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, where she's also a professor of practice. She has served as juror in design competitions such as the AIA, the Architecture League in New York, the Prix de Rome, as well as in a multiplicity of reviews at international architecture schools. Her design philosophy, and I'm just reading what Architectonics says, Architectonics aims to focus on each project core essence. We are interested in the use of hybrid sustainable materials and smart building systems. The use of digital design and project management not only increases efficiency and communication in the construction team, but even more. We facilitate the construction of innovative structures with a new design aesthetic. Sustainability for Architectonics is a state of mind. In 2007, Architectonics won the City of New York held design competition for a new sustainable waterfront development in Staten Island in New York City. Winka's recent design for the Q Tower in Philadelphia, developed with MIT Media Lab, collaboration between profession and academia and research, was designed to be a smart tower incorporating geothermal energy, smart sensor technology, and robotic systems. She has the design of a building of 35,000 square feet in New York City, currently under construction, has a target goal of LEED Gold. Recently completed buildings include mixed-use project, lofts, commercial, art galleries, corporate offices, retail project in USA, Europe, Asia, and Middle East. She has projects under construction in New York City, Santa Fe, and Liberia. She published extensively, but I'm very impressed to say she has out 3 monographs. And I remember her first monograph when we were in Peter Eisenman office was the must monograph in the studio. And that's how actually we start to know each other. The last monograph is from DAB in Germany and is, I think, just released or a year ago. She exhibits extensively also in the most famous galleries like Form Zero galleries in Los Angeles, the Kunsthal in Rotterdam, the Dessa Gallery in Ljubljana, the Tel Aviv Museum of Modern Art, the Guggenheim Museum, the London Biennale, the Venice Biennale, and the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Besides saying that she's an award-winning project architect, Architectonics has been the finalist and the winner in a multiplicity of invited national and international design competition, besides being the winner of prestigious awards. So I have Winka like one of my really role models in my career, in my profession, and also as a teacher. And I think that today she will amaze us with her buildings and the story that she will tell. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Maria. It's great to be here, and I'm glad I circumvented a little bit of a windy patch you had around here. My flight was cancelled till yesterday morning, so I'm kind of surprised I'm here. Yeah, so I think one thing which is always really important is, although my name's outside on the poster, it's really Architectonics who does all the work. You can imagine I rarely do anything alone. And there's people out there working really hard right now, so I like to give them credit. And also I think because I'm a terrible boss, and it means that we have a very horizontal office. I only hire people better than me. So, you know, I really have to share credit when I say it, I mean it. But also, I think we were talking about this today. It's been really important for me to combine practice with academia. And one of the reasons is I come from Holland, and we're very pragmatic in Holland. We do a lot of construction. But what we miss is the academic background, the study of philosophy, critical theory, and all that stuff. So I came to New York to do study in that, and have been teaching ever since Columbia, Harvard, and now I run the program at Penn. So hence also our office tends to operate like that. We are interested in larger fields of research, and projects fall often within that field of research. And one of the last ones we are working on is the idea of fragmentation as optimization. And I know this sounds a little bit abstract, so I will say a little bit more about that. But for example, fragmentation in nature is one of the ways to optimize, or actually to reproduce, like algae cells do. The internet, of course, chooses the most optimized routes, so fragments your messages. Architecture actually has fragmentation in a slightly different way, which I'm not that interested in. Oh, sorry, I actually have to exit the show. It's doing a slideshow thing for some reason, which will make it very fast, but maybe not what I want to do. Okay, let's hope that it stops. I think it did. So yeah, so fragmentation, let me go back for one split second. Fragmentation here as optimization was actually postmodernism, and I noticed when I drove in here that you have maybe not postmodern architecture, but definitely something someone told me, Spanish Renaissance. Is that right? Something like that. We in Europe, we don't know that, so this was a new field for me. We learned something today. But what I'm really interested in is to think how architecture could become itself more intelligent. And that sounds also very abstract. But what we do is, each project we look at, we try and find the essence, we try and add intelligence, and this often doesn't come from us necessarily, but by working with people on certain projects, like MIT Media Lab, like robotics people, like crafts people also, to actually, I love your doors here. So the idea that by working together with different people, you can actually really change the essence of a project from the core out. You can rethink what the most important thing is, and hence also really design it from the inside out. So I'll run through this quickly. This is one of the first buildings we built in New York, where we decoded the building code. The idea was really, if you have a restriction, why stick to the restriction? Maybe you can actually optimize this restriction into something which becomes more interesting. So building code in itself allows you to go up to 85 feet, and then my surprise was, what I didn't know is that, you know, as you always see buildings with these kind of wedding cake scenarios, that the actual restriction is a sloped plane. I'm a bit of a mathematics enthusiast. So I started looking at that and thinking, if we use inflection as a method, could we inflect that sloping plane? Let me see, my mouse wants to appear here. Very fast mouse. No, not easy. There's no pointer, no. But if you can use inflection, so basically it means the sloping plane inflects on the straight and vice versa, you can create a system which will ripple down from the top and starts to transform this facade not only in a 3D system, but also into something which maybe becomes a membrane you inhabit. So the idea is no longer I have a building and I smash a facade on top of it, but the facade becomes three-dimensional and actually is inhabitable. So Thinking about that, I was thinking, well, you know, you could glue it, you can caulk it, but maybe more interesting is to fold it. And I realized very, very quickly, if you try and do a folded curtain wall, you have a problem because the contractors don't like it. Or actually manufacturers don't like it much either. I tried Cornier and all these because we didn't have a lot of money for this building. Tried Cornier and I was really trying to convince them that only 10% of this building was folded and how could that be a problem? But they still gave me quotes of like 400 times the normal press. So in the essence, there were two solutions. One, I didn't do a folded curtain wall, or I wasn't calling it a curtain wall. I decided to try that first, so I called it glass wall. And you know, this sounds a little bit peculiar, but what it means, a curtain wall is a standardized system. Standardized systems are very 70s. It means you repeat the same unit over and over again. But if you call it glass wall, it basically means it's customized, you can do whatever you want. So that is in the end what we did, and we started fabricating the glass in Barcelona, double glazing. We extruded the mullions in Hong Kong, and then we put the whole thing together in Brooklyn and built this facade, which was a little bit scary to begin with. When the glass arrived, it was one of those moments that you think maybe this wasn't such a good idea. It was also actually the first time I actually started thinking about parametric design, because what was interesting about this whole thing is if you build something in Barcelona and those people speak Spanish, and you build something in Brooklyn, in Hong Kong, those people speak Chinese, they don't necessarily communicate very well, nor do they communicate very well to us. So what I realized is the only way to get this done is to send 3D files around rather than 2D drawings. And we send 3D files with XYZ coordinates to all those countries, and then only make 2D drawings to put this whole thing together on site. And this we did actually with Form Z still. So this was the period we designed everything 3D, but we drew the construction drawings by hand, which was a very peculiar phase. But exactly the opposite from other offices who were sketching by hand and putting everything in AutoCAD. So it kind of worked a bit backwards. But it was the way to do this, I guess. Halfway this building, we actually gave up on the idea of drawing drawings by hand, and we went into Vectorworks, which was a good solution. But here, I think what I want to point out is every time the facade turns closer or gets closer to an edge, we made it very 3D. So here, for example, where the entrance is, the glass wing folds out and becomes very three-dimensional. Here up top, it actually comes up over and down and forms a glass bulkhead. On the right is a bathroom where you could take some liberties as an architect. There's a small kind of competitive streak between New Yorkers and New Jersey people. So what we did here is we basically sandblasted the glass everywhere where you saw Jersey, and then where you saw the river, we left it clear. So you kind of have a very selected view of the river only. And then this is one of the, thank you, very nice. This is the entrance to the roof terrace, where we convinced the contractor right in the beginning to drag this huge piece of glass up to the roof, which is about 20 foot long, and then glue the pieces together to make a bulkhead, a glass bulkhead for the penthouse people. And the building, what we did is we actually didn't make traditional layouts. I'll explain a little bit more what I think about it later, but I kind of hate hallways in the traditional sense. And also in New York, it's hard to predict which people are really going to buy your spaces. So this particular one is a 3,000 square foot loft for one person of 28 years old, but there were like 1,800 square feet for whole families. So we designed this for him, and we started thinking that it would be beautiful to have the east-west connection. So you see light coming up in the morning and going under at night, and make an artery which kind of becomes the connective device for all the private areas. And then also, for example, here doors. This is a door which closes down against here, so you actually don't really see the doors when you start to move panels around. The doors appear. Or here, the door is a glass screen. Or in the bathroom's case, the whole wall is blue glass, the tiles are blue glass, and the only privacy you get is when you steam it up, and it's a steam shower. So I convinced my client that he would really have privacy as long as he steams a lot. And then the other thing is that we designed a non-toxic resin sink, which really plays with the light. I think architecture really exists by the grace of light. We forget that very often, but if you forget the light, you forget your architecture. And I think also what's really important is that the light can create our atmospheres and environments. So indirect lighting or direct lighting completely, or lighting from below, which we have in the shower, really changes the experience and how you feel in that space. And then not that long after, we got a question to fill in a parking lot, which was here. This is in Tribeca. That's a landmark district. We try and maintain everything in New York. So even though Tribeca is a set of warehouses, there is the idea that that would be a landmark, which is good, I think. The thing was that we had a parking lot, so if you want to keep that authentic, you would actually not build anything, which of course as an architect I wouldn't promote. So they gave quite some liberty, because what are you going to do, right? If you think that this building is completely different than that building, or this building, or that building, or that building, it's kind of hard to define what a landmark is or how you would even build it. So I told the landmark committee that I was more interested in the quality of an old building. Oh, raise your hand a little bit. In the quality of an old building rather than the actual copying of it. And what we did is we took the two rhythms of the neighbors, looked at the proportional systems of the old architecture, which gave us really generous ceiling heights, looked at proportional systems of the building volume overall, and the materials in Tribeca, which are stone and steel, and came up with a pixelation of stone, translucent stone, glass, and translucent glass. And also, I think for us it's really important, if this is a traditional building, to kind of delaminate and optimize or fragment the building into a very flat facade on the north side or the street side, and a very delineated and highly accentuated facade on the garden south side, so that the sun is in there and gets really deep into the spaces but doesn't overheat any of them. The building method we used for that is to actually use poured-in-place concrete, so that we could use a very strong frame which starts to carry the whole building. And rather than making walls, we compressed the space on the street and made it kind of lower, and then opened it up also in height at the garden, so you get deep, deep spaces. And that's then the first kind of idea of the back facade. This is not exactly a building for poor people. It is basically a set of stacked villas. And it made me realize that when we worked on this, that there is really no reason, as I said before, standardization is something of the 70s. It also counts for how we build our apartments. If we live in a building with multiple apartments, there's no need for these apartments to be the same. So here we find 2 triplexes, full floors, and then a duplex. And essentially the idea is that you make them all different, and then you can go shop for your apartment like you would for a sweater. Fit the one you like, and then have that one as your apartment, rather than thinking, I'm going to have the same one as my neighbor. And I think that's a more inspirational idea. And then in the front facade, because we did this pixelation idea, which by the way was a quite interesting thing to explain to a preservationist committee, where you have 30 preservationists and they all expect you to preserve something. So I had to give my parking lot story. And then when I explained and really we did actually do an extensive study of the buildings in Tribeca, they started to get into it, and in the end accepted it, and even more asked us for slides, because they thought it would be a good example of how they wanted to do their future landmark building. So I thought that was quite a compliment, because I was mortified when I stood in front of them, I have to admit. And it wasn't going so well in the beginning, so I remember when I was explaining it, and I was like, oh, I don't know where this is going. And my client was sitting in the back, and I saw him becoming more and more purple. And we had told him, please don't say anything, because he's very passionate. And at some point, he couldn't hold it anymore, and he stormed to the front. And by this time, he was dark purple, and said, well, I just want you to know that I'm spending a lot of money on this building. And I think it's going to be amazing quality, and we really studied this. This is what I wanted to say. And then went off again, and I was like, Oh yeah. That was maybe not the best kind of preservationist story, but it was interesting because I do think, you know, that his passion and his commitment to equality was actually really convincing, and you know, so we got to build this building. Now, what you might have also noticed, I'm extremely interested in innovative materials or hybrid materials, because I think in where we are now, the fact that we can use hybrid materials and actually innovate materials by making them hybrid or mutant is that they become stronger, more interesting, and you can do more with them. So in this case, this man is pointing at translucent stone, which is made in, actually the person we met was in Spain, but in the end we made it in Italy. And it was actually funny because the curtain was made in Italy, but the profiles, I forgot this thing. The profiles are ultra thin. These mullions are very, very thin, reinforced with steel. They're from Schuko in Germany. So it's a very international little facade. And this is then how it starts to look. And this is how it looks now. So you get these kind of small protrusions. We made the boxes in very thin stainless steel, so they really look frameless and they're suspended from the facade. And then here you see that kind of idea of the huge extensions in the back. So the idea is really that you have in summer a bigger house than in the winter, but visually a lot of light, but not a lot of overheating. And of course bathrooms, as you might have noticed, I have a bit of a bathroom theme. I have actually two things. I'm against hallways and I like nice bathrooms. But my bathrooms are a bit excessive, so these are all on the facade with sandblasted glass and some stone in it to make it a bit more private. Steaming doesn't necessarily work when you're in a city. But I think it's really important. If you live in a big city, it's one of the moments where you actually relax and you can have a moment of peace. The penthouse, I started thinking about turning it inside out. So on the bottom, it's really wrapped in a big terrace. But then here, this stair was a small inspiration from my trip in Greece. But I realized it's very nice that these houses in Greece have this constant in and out relationship through external stairs. And then, of course, when you go up, you have kind of a nice view and a pool. And then if you build it in concrete, the other benefit is that you can really extend or cantilever the stairs from the concrete wall itself. And it's a little bit like a, what do you call it, a stairway to heaven or something, but you have that feeling, right? A little bit where you, just in the last moment, you cut through the wall and you go to the roof terrace. And this is my favorite moment of a building, that you see, it's almost like you see like the diagram, this little diagram we made in the beginning is then actually built and comes out as exactly what you started to think about. And then when it's done, it becomes a little bit less obvious, but a lot nicer to live in. And we started finishing this with recycled Ipe. The benefit of working with Italians is that they're a lot less sensitive to liability, so they can really build large spans. They're not afraid. They come in with huge glass planes and break it a few times and they ship it over a view. They're very happy. Always positive. Always positive. Yeah, I have the best conversations with them. And then here you start to see. So these are the two. This is one of the triplexes who has kind of a kitchen down here and actually a connection between the bedroom and the living room. And the one next door has double height between the living room and the dining, and has a separate balcony for the bedrooms. So they're essentially completely different. What I forgot to tell you, which is maybe interesting, is that this looks like the ground, but it actually is the roof of the basement or the cellar, where we have parking. So in the front of the building we have a garage door, elevator, you put your car in, you go down with the elevator, you park your car in the basement, and you go up to your house. So it's a very New York solution to life, which here would be completely ludicrous, but there makes sense. Although my client came up with the last moment, and I'm very European, so I put, cars in it, like a little Audi and Mercedes and whatever. And he's like, but what about my Suburban? Like, I actually saw them on a Q7, which is kind of a smaller Suburban. So yeah, and then here you start to see the stone, how it starts to reflect from the inside. What's very nice is that by day the stone glows on the inside, but by night it's the opposite. So the building really reverses. And this is another bathroom in the facade where you have the stone, and then different layers of finishes. We have all the tiles we use are stone tiles, and in these bathrooms we use the same marble. The marble story is another one. It's quite interesting. If you ever have to choose marble, it's not easy. You get a stone block of 7 by 7 by 7 feet, and you have to predict how it's going to look. So that was quite a relief to see that it actually worked out. And then we do smaller projects. This is the creative director of a company we also hold the stores for internationally. We just did one in London, Shanghai, and Paris. And when I met her, initially I did her townhouse with her. And in New York, what happens is you get a townhouse like this, and then you're allowed to push it out for the bottom 2 floors of 12 feet, which we did. So that was extended. That gave a bedroom floor with a large terrace. But more than that, we thought it was really important to have this oblique connection, because the one thing I learned about the Granite Street building, the first one you saw, is that when you fold things, you have not only a folded facade, but you also have beautiful connections up and down. And so that building is actually quite voyeuristic. And I live there actually also, and I found that no one ever talks about that, which is quite cute. So everyone's looking at each other and no one is talking about the fact that you can. But since this was for one family, I thought it'd be more excusable. And so we thought it'd be really nice if you had a writer's studio for one of the partners on the ground floor, and then the second floor, the parlor floor in these old houses, would be connected vertically through kind of a fold in the facade, as well as from this door you could go down to the garden. So we started working with the facade in a way that you have this connection from the writer's studio stayed outside, the garden becomes an exterior room, the living room also has an access straight outside. And then here you have that oblique moment where you can actually go outside. Again, this facade, I got really into customizing facades, I guess, when I did that big building. This one is made out of double glazing in very thin steel. We finished it with a car paint, very heavy black car paint. And then everything openable, as you could see here, the door, actually you don't see it, but the doors here are steel with wood. This is recycled wood from an old boat I bought in Bali for like 3 clients at the same time, because there's a lot of wood in the boat. It's really beautiful palisander. And then it's also, you see it here on the stairs. And then you have this amazing connection with the garden. So this very thin facade really extends to the outside. Because the building originally has a very small floor plate, it's really like every floor plate has one function. So the ground floor has the writer's studio and a small guest room. This is the main floor where you come in. We totally took the stairs out. This is a set of doors I'll show you in a moment. We made with a 6-axis CNC mill, made in LA by one of my friends who has the biggest independent car design company. And then you have living, dining, kitchen, and the stair to the garden. And these are the doors. So the idea is that in winter you want these doors kind of closed, and then the whole wall has one pattern. In summer you would like these open, and so you close it and then it forms another pattern. And then these are the doors. It's very, very thick wood doors. Incredibly heavy with a very, very heavy track. But it's very pretty to see this kind of continuity. So here, for example, they're open, you see the living room. And then the new stair with a glass sheet which runs up 4 stories, all the way up and down with a skylight on the top. The bedroom area with the extension with the terrace here, bathroom, bedroom, walk-in closet, and the bathroom. Again, a very small bathroom. I started bringing stuff in from Bali. This is made in Bali. It's really a nice bath. It's made from very, very thin concrete, which is colored through and through in white. And it's interesting because this is actually Korean, shaped in one piece. Which looks very similar, but this is actually a cementous bathtub. And then this is that terrace where you have these same doors again with the palisander in the black steel, all pivoting and a big bench planter where you can actually have that extension of the bedroom in the summer. And then we grew a little bit, so we started doing bigger things. And one thing I just wanted to show you, since we were talking about that, this is actually the beginning movie. Someone actually recently asked me, is this the only thing you gave to the contractor? Which I kind of like, which it was not. Of course, I broke this, sorry. My engineers are better than me. But yeah, so this is the robotic tower where we work together with MIT Media Lab, and as you saw in the beginning, it was mostly making intelligent of the building by linking existing technologies in a much more sensitive and intelligent system. So not completely reinventing the whole thing, but really linking existing systems, and then again thinking that each person should have their own apartment and be really special, making different algorithms for facades with one basic rule: everyone gets a window, every room gets a window. The windows need to be fluidly connected, and each apartment should have a different layout versus facade connection. Then the other thing is, because I'm Dutch and very kind of social democratic, I always think it's irritating that penthouses are on the top of a building, because I like the second floor. And if I was ever rich and I wanted a penthouse, I would like it on the second floor. So I convinced this developer to do 5 penthouses, 2 on the top and 3 distributed through the building. And they're basically these kind of duplexes with very large glass walls. So that was kind of a little victory, especially on marketing people who always do everything very, very basic. You see, this is a very low neighborhood. This is actually in the more alternative neighborhood of Philadelphia, where there are the younger artists, new restaurants, cafes, and stuff like that. This one in Brussels was one of those projects we all hope humans get. This was a great developer. This street has, for the half of it, a tunnel, and the other half, it doesn't have a tunnel. It's a big shopping boulevard in the middle of Brussels, and the developer has proposed to the city and the state, as Brussels is a city-state, to build a tunnel for them, extend the tunnel, and in exchange he wants free property to build on. So you got the ground for free by extending the tunnel. Very clever move. And then they asked us to design 10 pavilions in the park. Now I was thinking when we were doing that, how do you get to design the park in the same way you design the pavilion? Or how do you not make a distinction between the two? And actually what you see, I can't point anymore because I broke it. On the right, you see a little graph, and it basically is a set of, we wrote a music piece for this piece of land, took the scores, the frequencies of the sound, put it in Maya, and started to study the waves. I think it's really broke. Study the waves of the site, so that, as you can see, the resulting shapes were not only creating an interior space, but even more than that, an exterior space. And that for us was very, very important. The fact that we were on this tunnel gave small problems construction-wise. And I talked to an engineer in Holland who was actually the one who in the 60s and 70s started to develop very, very thin concrete shell buildings. And we figured out that if we made these buildings from these lightweight concrete shells, it would be possible to span on the tunnel without having to do, wow, amazing. Be careful though. Historians can fix things. It's really important to have historians in us. So these shells are sitting on these, and then basically these are the concrete shells. So what we developed with him was, rather than a frame, which we originally thought, actually to work straight with the concrete shell, which is perforated. So the idea was to move from here to here, and then get these kind of environments where the perforation would also give natural daylight. These surfaces would collect water for the park, would be stored in water containers, and would be automatic irrigation system. And even more than that, as we figured out, what always is the struggle, is with developers, they want to build more than you really think they should. right? I mean, in a way, you want the park to win. So, as the park wasn't really winning, we proposed a set of green solutions, like hanging green gardens, greenhouses inside to separate either retail areas or gallery areas from retail. And we invited, since we were thinking that sustainable could also be really interesting on an artistic level, we invited a whole bunch of artists who were working in kind of green, literally green plant way. So we thought anything plant related had to be either cultural, sustainable, or just pleasurable. So the pleasure principle, really important. And then these volumes. So this was one sketch for the hanging gardens. They were here. So long story short, we proposed it to the city approved it, then the city said, well, you know, because we are city-state, the state has to approve it. When it came to the state, they had two questions. And they said one thing, they wanted 30% to be cultural, which was actually a huge benefit, I thought. So that was nice. But they also wanted an ice rink bigger than the one in Rockefeller Center. I don't know why Brussels is feeling competitive with New York. And so I made this ice rink, which is 30% bigger. We thought if you make it bigger, then you don't do 3%, you want 30%. So let's make it 30% bigger. And since it is not very cold in the summer, this in summer then is a really nice square where you can sit on the edges and see performances. Or in winter, you can actually go skate. And then the other one we added, which we thought, well, if we're doing this anyway, the square idea, this is a fountain which reacts to the traffic noise. So lots of traffic, lots of fountain, no traffic, no fountain. And also quite a surprise thing. So I thought if you walk over the fountain by accident, you really kind of can experience that. And then once in a while we do something because we think we should. This happened when this thing starts once in a while to think itself. Computers should not be clever. In the middle of a crisis, we realized that, you know, first you feel very sorry for yourself, everything's postponed, things are a little bit slower. And then I thought, well, half the world is doing much worse than we are, so let's think about this again. And thinking about fragmentation, one country which had serious fragmentation was Liberia. They just came out of 15 years of civil war and are rebuilding their whole country. And I knew someone who was thinking of building a school for all the orphans who are a resultant of this civil war. And so the fragmentation of the environment has caused a huge change from villages into very, very small communities, which are not always very friendly to each other. Oh my God, please stop this. I think what it does, whatever. But, so what we did is we went there and I offered the foundation to do the school pro bono for them. And when we went there, I knew we were in trouble when we were here. This is the moment when we, sorry, this thing has gone crazy. Stop, please. That's really interesting. Let me just push it back. So this was the moment I knew we were in trouble because this is actually the gas station. And the two bottles over there on the right are $2.50 each and are the gas. And at first I thought we were going to get killed actually. We stopped. Just arrived, I'm dead. Then it turned out to be a gas station. And we tried to convince the driver to buy both because we were thinking, you know, we'd like to not stop again and that'd be kind of handy to spend $5 and maybe get to the hotel. But he was convinced $2.50 was fine. We were forbidden to buy two and he bought one and we had to pay the $2.50 to him and then we went. And we made it, which was amazing. But it made me realize that construction there was going to be slightly different than I thought. But also, you know, when you look at these images, you see there's a total mix of possibilities, right? You have the perfectly beautiful people dressed in traditional gear, but you have the motorbikes, the satellite dishes and everything also there. So it's an interesting society. And the reason why we didn't build in the city was really because of this. The infrastructures have not been rebuilt. People are actually squatting most of the area. And our clients, which are 200 of them, are tiny little people. Oh, where are they? Here they are. tiny little people who for Christmas got new backpacks, as you might notice. And they're adorable, adorable kids. And the reason why my client wanted to build this school, which turned out to be actually an orphanage, was really because when they grow up, it's quite a dangerous society, and she wanted these kids to feel safe and to have kind of a new idea of identity and family. So where I offered to do a school, I ended up doing a sustainable village, where we had academic buildings. We started thinking of how to build this and realized that you really have to think about everything: passive ventilation, collecting water with the roofs, storing it, having open air environments like this dining hall, and to make this around a set of courtyards so that people or the kids could do their homework and really feel that this environment is something they feel safe in. So what we did a lot is make these double skins to have them do their homework, to have them have a filtering, because they have either too much water or too much sun. It's hardly ever that it is not anything. And it was quite important to us to kind of create this kind of new sense of community. I mean, this thing is totally crazy. Sorry, I don't know what it's doing. Maybe that helps. So yeah, this is an extremely interesting project where we are really, I think mostly we did it to help, and I think what was the big surprise to us is that we were actually helped ourselves a lot, in the sense that it was extremely inspirational, extremely fascinating to be able to build in an environment like that. The materials we used are local. They build kind of concrete blocks with a lot of beautiful traditional patterns, so a lot of perforated blocks. And we got a lot of things donated. So we got the solar panels donated. The wood, which you can't use there, by the way, because they have termites and a lot of rain, is donated by a facade company, and it's a sort of facade panel. We got completely for free, including the sewing machine on the blades, because you can't get all that. But also we try to make it sustainable, not only in the sense that it creates its own energy, also in the sense that by creating its own energy, it can sell back to the grid. So hopefully that this little community, which is now located next to a small village, which is another kind of good feedback, will be sustainable also financially, which, you know, is the next challenge, of course. Then the city of Tel Aviv invited us to study a problem they had, which I think a lot of big cities have. They get all excited about having a huge amount of population, they make all these big highways, and now we're disconnected, right? One neighborhood cannot get to the next one. So they asked us to make a project which was almost like a filter project, where there was a music hall, housing, a municipal tower, and a huge amount of connective devices back and forth. As you can see here, the way we did that is that this is kind of the plan. The big connection is to the area above here. Forget I have this thing. To the area above here, and so this connection was really, really important. Housing is here with the municipal tower, music hall, and then a very perforated square with all the shopping and the outdoor cinemas below. As you can see here, so we're cutting here through the housing plan. Tel Aviv actually is also not that peaceful, as you might know, so there's a lot of bomb-free rooms and funny construction methods you need to learn. But what we thought was really important also here is it has a very predominant wind direction. So we started looking whether these kind of almost lung-like shapes could start to work for us, in the sense that it would give a lot of natural ventilation and cross currents. So here you see the music center, you go down here for the shopping or up there to enter the municipal tower, which is here coming from the bridge. This comes down from the shop or up from the shopping. It's important to us also that that whole bottom of the tower, where you get your passport, you have to pay for your traffic fines, was very much part of the plaza, so it has a very, very light skin, and also from the inside out back connected to the whole area. And then from the lower area, again, you have this very, very easy connection. There's an outdoor seating area here. And this was kind of the idea. So we started studying this predominant wind connection and realized that we could maybe make a tower with lungs, or a breathing tower, where it works as a heat chimney. It pushes the cold air, pushes the warm air out. We worked with Transsolar from Germany, and also realized that if you do a tower like that, the only double skin you need, the double glazing skin, is on the hot facade, right? So as you're pushing the hot air out, this also helps cool the very hot side of the tower, which then worked double for us, because as the tower was occupied both by the municipal center and was offices and small companies in there, we could separate them by these lungs, which then became social gathering spaces. So rather than thinking of a tower as an isolated unit, it became kind of a mini city in itself and started to connect back also interior to the different sections. Same air for the music center with these kind of shark fin-like openings, which you see here. And then also for the roof of the music center, where you have again that ventilation, that opening. And the music center also had a music school, an academic part, which was connected to it and had a ground floor where they shared coffee shops and ateliers and stuff like that. And then at night it starts to have these very mysterious, glowy, almost like small oases. It gets extremely hot in Tel Aviv in the summer, and they love their sandstone, so they build everything with white stone, which my first experience was that it was very, very daunting, all the sun and all this reflective white. So the first thing we thought is we need a lot of these kind of filtered areas where you can really soften the exposure of the sun and the sun on the building. In a similar time, we were asked for the same thing, not the same thing, but also to do a study for Abu Dhabi. There's a new area, which is not where everyone's building their museums. It's in the center. It's a new business district called Central Plaza. And we were asked to do a study for 2 towers. One was a office tower and one is a hotel tower. And I love the shape, because the first thing he said is he did not want one of those duck towers they make in Dubai, where every tower looks like either a circle with a hole in it or like a duck or like whatever it looks like. He really wanted a tower which was an urban architectural statement. And one thing which and since we very much were in agreement with him, we also realized that, as I just said, is that very many skyscrapers have a very insulated attachment to the city, or no attachment to the city. And what was very nice here is that actually there was an underground shopping area which connected the 2 towers here, but also that these towers could have, again, like more of a plaza or gathering areas within this system. Actually today someone said this about this building, that because it's vertical you don't see each other a lot. And I think that's definitely a problem of skyscrapers. So we started thinking about sky lobbies, which weren't moments to switch elevators, but actually moments to meet people and switch elevators, maybe. We did a study of the facades. You always have cooler moments and more warm moments, so we started working with glass technologies and fritting silver fritting to deflect that. Did a study of the intensity of that and worked back to the tower. And then here you start to see how this ground area and the lines connecting these sky lobbies also reflect back to the garden or the park it was in. It was a very nice kind of idea also of the Sheikh to make one long promenade, or promenade/park, where then these towers were kind of rooted into. The ground floor as transparent and open as possible. These openings to the lower shopping area. Studies of the connecting sky lobbies and possibilities to let lighting in the deeper atrium areas. Looking up from these lower shopping areas to the towers. Very much scaling down also in material when you hit the pedestrian area, so that there is a moment where you can go through small shops into the atrium of the tower, and also changing materials so that you really get kind of a different atmosphere. We do sketches, we do design in the computer, but then we go back and forth between computer and this. And then the sky lobbies as they started to develop. It was also a moment where you can start to express the structural frame of the tower better and start to create these double height moments and the light slots I was just talking about. This was the hotel sports center. So the sports center was for the city, also for the hotel. And then from the inside, from the gym area, you look down at the pool, over the other tower to the sauna areas. And then the hotel entrance, again, one of those crystalline spaces, ramp up to the hotel, connects back to the retail areas. And finally, the atriums and how the light starts to throw in. Of course, these countries have incredible light. It's part the negative and the positive. But by filtering it and making it use of the indirect way of getting light in, so it's not streaming in immediately always, but often bouncing off against surfaces and then coming in, more or less how you would light a museum. It's very possible to actually get a lot of natural daylight in these deeper areas, which then get much more urban, much more active. The light changes over the day. You don't get too much fluorescent light. And then here you see that shopping area. So really below ground, it is one area combined with these atriums up there where the trees grow through it. Plants, we do plants. And the towers. At night it was quite nice to track these into the gardens so that the light of the gardens along the paths was also tracking up in the towers. And then I'll show two last projects, hospitality and retail. There's a really interesting movement in the idea of hotels, where more and more hotels actually go back to the old principle where you used to live in a hotel. And this way, this was actually quite an interesting moment where this is more or less the zoning envelope of the site, which is 200 feet deep, 80 foot wide, so it's extremely deep, has 2 streets on either end. And originally we thought we'd just build the full zoning envelope with a vertical opening in it, which actually the city thought was an okay idea. But then they wanted this facade to be only 60 and not 80. And we thought that was actually quite interesting because the moment you do that, you could push the other side to the other end and actually work almost like a knot, this tower into strands, where from one strand you come in, you have all the public functions of the hotel, and then the pool juts out on the other end. You'll see that in a moment. And then also because it's diagonal, the approximation to the lot line will give you facade differentiation. This facade was made from stone, aluminum, honeycomb and glass, and goes from the lot line where you can have 10% glass to almost full glass here. And then as it moves back, it constantly changes transparency. So it's a small algorithm we developed to calculate that. And because of that opening going through it horizontal, you have sometimes 1 building, sometimes 2 buildings. And the pool, as you can see it poking out here, 5-story lobby here, the ground floor connected to the 2nd floor so that you can have convention spaces, and the lobby connected through a little champagne bar. I always think if you're in a hotel, you might as well drink champagne. Big restaurant for the hotel. What is interesting if you work on these kind of projects is that you actually get a lot of clients. You get the developer who does the building, the GHM group who did the hotel, who runs the hotel, Robuchon who had a restaurant in the plaza, the eSpa who had a spa here, Assoline Library who had a library in the back lobby. And all those people want to be at meetings and tell you what they want. It's really quite a lovely procedure, I have to say. My favorite person was a really big chef from Robuchon who would fly in from Paris. I always had the feeling at some point he was going to tear out a knife. And it would be very specific about the routing from the kitchen to his restaurant and how big the kitchen was. It was actually the most amazing client who was so perfect in the way he explained everything that it made it very, very easy to work with him. And then all these kind of functions as they go through this knot, or the unknot as we call it. In the public plaza you see the building over top, and in the restaurant you see the same. The entry plaza. And then this little light slot, which you get, where you get just enough light to light through this atrium in the evenings. So in the morning you get lots of light here, and in the evening you just get this sliver of light coming back. And of course the rooms in the sloping part are quite interesting. They have self-closing blinds with a reaction to sensor to the sun. But we thought it was quite beautiful because nowadays in cities, with all our vertical facades, you actually hardly ever experience really the weather or the sky or how things are outside. So we thought this would be really amazing to be in the sky, or everyone would have their penthouse. This is another social democratic idea. Just spread the penthouse down to the ground floor. And then this is the last one. This is, so the creative director we did the house for, and then we started doing her flagship stores. The flagship store in Shanghai is on the Bund, is on the water in the harbor, right here. This is also the fog in Shanghai. It's very, very tough sometimes. But beautiful, beautiful combination of naval architecture with intricate details and the Art Deco buildings they have along the Bund. This is the building we are in, made out of this incredible stone they have there. Very, very old building, and Ports has 2 floors in there. And so the first thing we thought is to kind of counteract the both, the naval architect and the Art Deco, to make a liner for the collection. So the whole space is lined with this intricate liner which really reacts to the space, but also brings back this kind of organic form of the naval architecture. And so we bought an old Chinese wood house and brought it to the person with the 6-axis robotic CNC mill. So you get the craft of the material of the old houses and the technology of where we are now, and then crafted this kind of big closet liner out of it where the collection is kept. So this collection is all the way along the edges. It has a kind of often light from below. The moments where this comes in are small openings. The tables are carrying the details with small lights, which are here off, but here on. And the middle areas are actually areas where we have featured the highlights of the collection. So the moments when they do the fashion show and they come back and they have the new collection, that would be right here, where you again have light, the holes where the cables come from, the lights also in there, and then the light from above. These surfaces we really try to mold to every possible use, so also seats with felt pillows are part of that. And here again these openings, looking back through the milled wood to the middle area. What was really nice, I didn't bring the construction photos of this, but this is actually material from the 50s. This is GRFC, fiber reinforced concrete. And it's completely made off-site in segments. And as you might have noticed, the whole ceiling is also made out of it. So this whole thing was made somewhere and then came back in very large chunks. And because of that material, you can really plaster that to one smooth finish. And then they sprayed it on site into this finish. So it's quite actually fast installation. Here they had a bit more trouble, I think. The precise fit of the wood was quite interesting. And the carpets also follow the same shapes. Here again the seats, the LED lighting on the bottom and the top, the whole collection. It's the difference kind of here, the axis. This is actually to the dressing rooms. And then in the dressing room, we decided that, you know, people were waiting for people trying things on, probably wanted to have quite a private conversation, so we put padded walls for good acoustic values. But it's quite nice to see the difference between the wood, which we didn't treat at all after the CNC, but just rubbed with the silver powder and oil to kind of express the texture more. And has a nice contrast with the gold fabric from the padded walls. Fitting rooms, light in fitting rooms is usually horrible, so here we made a huge big mirror frame around the mirror with indirect light in the front and another mirror which is pivoting behind you so you can see yourself from all angles. And just again the kind of the carpet which fits in there. The idea is always to keep materials flush. This is quite funny. They called me at some point and said, well, you remembered almost everything, but you've got the exit door. What do you want as an exit door? And I was like, well, we're recycling everything anyway, so why don't you find an old door? And, make sure it's fire rated. And so my client took that very literal, and he went shopping and bought a 600-year-old door, which they then extensively renovated for 2 weeks. And had absolutely stunning bronze details, as you can see here. Really, really beautiful. It was pink and blue when it arrived. And changed all the wood back to all the original finishes. And then sent me an image and said, do you think this is okay as an exit door? So yeah, just make sure you put the exit sign above it, because I would think this is an exit door. But yeah, so in China this is approved. I don't think I could get away with that here, but I think it is probably the most beautiful exit door in the world. Right? And then that's an ask you back. That's it. Only easy ones.
Anybody? Yes?
I actually have a question about school designs in Monrovia. It looked like you mentioned how architecture gives someone the ability to define their identity. And I wanted you to kind of expand a little bit about that, because like you said, they're little people, and we don't even really understand how they're defining culturally their identities as well as children.
Yeah.
How do you feel like as architects can help with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was interesting because originally we were doing one building. And when I started thinking about 200 children, staff, library, dining hall, and imagine that in one big building, it did sound like a very scary orphanage, right? Like the one you kind of know from scary movies. And so I started talking to the head of the foundation and said, would you mind if I make it in a village? So the kids live in a building, in groups with the people who take care of them. The people who work there are in similar buildings, so it's like around the courtyard, so they can meet in the courtyard, do homework, get help with homework, do academic buildings, so they really feel they go from home to school rather than down the stairs, from some institutional bedroom to an institutional classroom. And then same for dinner, go to the dining hall, go to the library. So that's why we made more like a set of courtyards with building around it, so that really it is like life, where you go and do something and you have different people you meet. Because also we realized we couldn't feed them all at the same time. 200 kids is way too much. So we did a whole trafficking schedule for this, where we do the first 100 kids who get food, and then how do we do that with the class schedule? I got very involved at some point with all of that, and and that was really the choice. And also because I realized if you want to make it sustainable, it's much easier to make a sustainable village than a sustainable big building. Although you could say cost-wise it's probably cheaper to build a big building, but there everything is relative, because when we bought this site, we first looked in the city and literally found these kind of conditions as I showed you, and then realized that for social security it was better to be kind of neighboring a local village, where the local village people can work in the orphanage and have some sort of social connection and social control. So it's safer to be part of a village where the people feel, and also because the orphanage is providing Red Cross services to the village. So there's more of a real symbiotic relationship with the people from the village. And they totally appreciated that, and of course it's a huge source of work for them, because they helped build it, they became the guard. But yeah, so what we found is like you buy the piece of land and then you have to build a road to the piece of land. You have no plumbing, you have to build septic tanks, you have to build water tanks in the ground to collect the water. You have to build a big wall around it, otherwise everything gets stolen in 5 minutes. You have to put a guard house on there because the guard has to live there, because otherwise still gets stolen every 5 minutes. You really have to change completely the way you think. And then we wanted to use a lot of, apart from the fact from what we got donated, we wanted to use local materials and have local people build it. So we actually found a contractor who could do that and who was helping us do that. So, but yeah, it's tricky. I mean, they always try to get away with stuff, and they build blocks which kind of pulver when you know, they have to be redone. And so it's not easy, but it's really interesting, and I think it slowly starts to work. So, but it's a long process. Remember, we just built the first 2 buildings, and the wall and the road and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, for these kids, you know, these kids are not necessarily without parents. The UN definition of an orphan is either no parents or one parent who can't take care of them. A lot of them do have one parent, but they're just incapable of taking care of them. So I think they're very, very happy there. You know, it's a beautiful area close to water, and it's very, very peaceful. So I think it's a lot better for them. But, yeah.
I have a question. You know, you talk a lot about optimization, especially, you know, in school, the conversation of optimization came up quite often. My question is more geared towards the optimization of the materiality. That in the previous projects, a lot of them are materials that are flown in from these packing places in Spain. And then in the later projects, the more recent projects, I'm seeing more local materials being trying to be used as effectively as possible, which makes sense because we're all trying to achieve at some point. And I guess my question would be, now that you're focusing or trying to apply more regional, local materials, how does that change the attitude of optimization by the formal materiality dialogue between the two? Because if you're using a particular material that you can't get, and so you have to rethink your optimizations.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, there's you know, if you have the goal of innovation and the goal of local materials, it's diametrically opposed, I think, sadly. But you know, one thing I always wondered is why upstate New York, for example, doesn't supply more to New York, right? I mean, there's a very poor area which essentially could provide us with all kinds of interesting things, and this is now actually for the first time happening. Where people from New York go back upstate and they have amazing companies where you can have these kinds of doors made, or actually the doors I made for the townhouse were made in LA because the only person who I knew could do it was this guy with the car company, with a big enough CNC mill to do that. But, you know, it's also funny because, for example, with the folded glass, we had a local company price it, and a Spanish company price it. And this is one of those things where before Christmas, they both came in, and let's say, I forget how much, but let's say they both were like $80,000 for basically the whole facade double glazed and folded. And when I came back from Christmas, the local company called me and said, oh, by the way, that was just for 1 layer of glass. So they doubled the price. And I was like, really? Well, you really write down here it's double glazing and it's that price. So you, and I think what my sneaking suspicion is that they thought we're the only ones who can do this. Let's just double the price. Got greedy. And so I said, well, are you really, really sure? And then, yeah, I'm really, really sure. I said, well, okay, then I'm going to really, really do it somewhere else. So I went to the Spanish company and I asked them, are you still sticking to your price? Is this really for double glazing? And they're like, yes, and we will also throw the transport in because we really want to do this with you. And so I said, great. So we gave them the project, which was ridiculously affordable. And then the LA company called me and said, we heard you found someone else, and whatever the prices they gave you, we will do better than that. And I said, well, it's funny you say that because you were exactly the same price, but you doubled it. So I think, you know, I've decided. And I thought it was really peculiar because, you know, it's sometimes you try and be local and you really want to be local, and that was my first preference also because, you know, travel is dangerous for glass and it's not necessarily the easiest. But later we found out that actually if you do double glazing, the fact that you have to go over the mountains, this was in a mountainous region, you have to go over the mountains is really bad for double glazing because it pops, so you have to put in little straws, and that actually by boat from Spain was much easier because it just goes over water and it's flat. So in the end we did it with a Spanish company and it was extremely easy. And then we have a contract with them for 25 years to keep the molds. So they, whenever, we already had the building next door started later than us, and they threw a huge amount of concrete right through the facade in a trajectory down. And so we almost immediately had to buy new glass. So we tested that hypothesis and it worked. But yeah, so the aim is really to do local materials, but it's really sad sometimes that the contractors world is extremely behind in the US from the Europeans, and manufacturers tend to also be much more inclined. Like I said, my Italian curtain wall contractor sadly is making double the size of what any American company wanted to make in span. So it's a bit of a struggle. Do I really want to make a building with tiny little windows in my curtain wall? No. So I'd rather first do a few buildings where I really push the boundary and hopefully show to contractors here that it's okay and it still stands and it's not blowing out, and then constantly sticking to the local materials. And local materials, anytime I can get it, I do it, or reclaimed materials, or I can find things which are reclaimed. But if you put it on a boat, it's not that pollutant. It depends on how you transport it also. If you go harbor to harbor, it's quite okay actually. But yeah, I find what is really interesting about working 3D is that you go from architect to manufacturer and you skip the contractor. And that's also the only way I've made these projects kind of financially possible, by finding usually the pricing before I get the GC. So that when I get a contract and they go, that's really difficult, and they're thinking of, putting up the price, that you can say, listen, I know that looks difficult, but it's this and this price, and we have the people who can do it. And often I give them 2 options so they can choose. But that takes out the moment where they can say, well, we don't know how much it is, so we're going to put in a few $1 million for that. So we tend to do a lot of proactive research and work directly with manufacturers. And the benefit is that now manufacturers come to us when they have a new material because they think, this woman is crazy enough to introduce that, so we'll just try that. So yeah, so I get a lot of information back also from them. And the other thing is that now they're starting to manufacture here. So for example, the German profile is actually made here. It's still Schuko, but it's made in America. So, it's so those things are slowly also, those companies are changing, right? Like an Audi is no longer made only in Germany. Actually, the Chinese Audis are made in China. By German company, but still, So I mean, the time where we thought that things were made in one spot by one company is also no longer true. So I think companies are becoming more global than we are global as architects. And so that makes that you can very often use the intelligence from Germany, but made here, and use it, here. So in that sense, it's I think getting easier. I don't think that that's getting worse. And I'm hoping that areas like upstate New York or cities around, it's always like the big cities tend to have very poor areas around it. And if the supply demand could be more calibrated, maybe it's another way of optimization, it would be much easier and better for that kind of idea. And I'm hoping that works. And in New York it's really interesting because a bunch of really crazy New Yorkers, there are now strange companies upstate. Like you get the fresh milk in a bottle. Like when I grew up as a kid, we used to have that, and you bring the bottle back and stuff. It's nice, and that's kind of the new thing. So I think that's, and then it's innovated with different ways of doing it. So you can order it online. But yeah, I think it will always be a struggle. Because as Rem Koolhaas once said, the only way to be sustainable is not build at all. And it's true, right? Or the true landmark is a parking lot. So yeah. Any other questions?
A question to the use of stone in I think 1 or 2 of the projects. I was wondering, before you decided, I don't know how thick the stone is, if it's very thin, or maybe, can you tell us more about it? But you could go from a range, it can be a film thin, it can be laminated onto glass, or you could try onyx, and it's translucent as well. Or you could make a thicker stone, and it would actually increase enormously the sustainability of the building. We have a recent research, I think the first one in Germany compares glass facades and stone facades. And so over a lifetime cycle, they proved that several towers built in Frankfurt, which would have been done with a high majority of natural stone, which is only 3 to 4 centimeters thick, depending on how you hang it, they would have a much longer lifetime, and the maintenance cost would drop enormously, and additional impact on environmental control, etc., would be also better. So I was wondering, did you go through a range of thinking about those possibilities? How thin was the stone?
Yeah, we had to, because it was being developed as we were doing it. But the way we did it now is it's 1/4-inch stone on 1/2-inch glass, and it's really double glazed panel. So it's like double glazing, but with stone on the outside. That's for the translucent panels. We also have opaque stone panels, and when we clad the existing building, as you said, it's just thick stone on anchors. But in the curtain wall, because we wanted to stay within the 1 inch, it's actually stone on honeycomb, and then insulated from the back. So, because in New York we also, as you have everywhere, we have insulation values we need to stick to. So that was really nice, because you could really calibrate, how you're doing that. So we're working with those people on it, and we got way much higher than the New York insulation law, as it's pretty low, I think. But also sound effect is amazing. We hear nothing in that building. And that's the nice thing of, I think that's actually, I'll give the credit to the Schuko profiles, where, without mullion, there's no bridge of sound or temperature, everything is disconnected, and super clever engineering, I have to say. It's really a pleasure to look at that stuff, because you're like, wow. And it's like, the mullions are this thin. So it's quite an amazing product. And we asked it in a special finish, so it also feels like when you do all curtain wall, you can get that for the whole building, which is nice, because it doesn't look like the curtain wall you've seen before, which is special. And especially in the back facade, where we have the gigantic stretches, the mullion stays more or less the same. I have no idea how they do that, but it's not deflecting. I looked at it the other day, I was like, we have a piece of glass which is as long as this whole screen, and about 3 feet high. It's a gigantic piece of glass. So yeah. But yeah, technology is interesting. It changes, and I think the hybridity of materials like the honeycomb stone or glass stone or whatever, it makes, because the film they use nowadays also is really not just glue. It has really, it has fibers in it, so it has already kind of a strengthening effect, in the sense that it makes the whole material more flexible. So it's no longer when you have this small bit of tension that it cracks. It actually adds a level of elasticity to the material. So, there's really nice new products out there. So I like to use them. I also think it's more efficient. You use less of the natural resources. So.
Would you like, Winka, to tell to our students a little bit about your story of being a young girl coming to New York almost 20 years ago, starting a new office, a new life, if it was easy? We talked today at lunch, but I would like you to share with the audience.
Well, I already told you about my frustration, that I thought Holland was too pragmatic. And hence I came to really study philosophy and critical theory. And then ended up in Columbia. And the one benefit was that we in Holland already worked on computers, funny enough. I was in Columbia in 91, 92. And we worked in Holland already in computers, also in the office where I worked. And not much was going on here, funny enough. So when I came to Columbia, it's really interesting if you do a postgraduate year. I think that's one thing I would recommend to everyone, and to do it in another culture, if you can. Because you sometimes learn more in 1 year, and that's not because the school is necessarily, well, the school is also really good, but not that much better. It's just because you're so concentrated and rested and ready. But yeah, so that I did, and then my final review, Peter Eisenman was in my thesis review, and I had an article or something, I written something about Deleuze and Guattari and something about Lyotard, and he wasn't sure that my quote of Lyotard was good or perfect, and so he said to me, can you send that article to me? I like to read it. And so I said, sure, I'll send it to you, but can I have an interview on Monday? Well, give things if you don't, a bit of training. So that made him laugh, and he said, sure, call my secretary, whatever. So I went that Monday, gave him the text, had an interview with his manager, the CEO. And the guy looked at my work, and in Holland, the benefit of being Dutch is that we build very, very young. So although I worked in an office, I also had built some stuff by myself. So I was like, this is what I did with the office, this is what I built myself. And I remember the guy sat there and he was like, how can you prove that you built this? And he obviously did not believe me. And I said, call my clients. He said, I wouldn't do it now because they're sleeping, it was Holland. But tomorrow I can give you numbers and you do it. And then Peter Eisenman walked in and he said, there you are. And he said, did you hire her already? The guy was completely like, without any power, obviously. And said, well, I'm going to call her references tomorrow. And, with a big wink to Peter Eisenman. And Peter Eisenman said, just hire her. I believe her. And so I got hired. And I think it was just because he didn't like the CEO. That was the beginning. But, and then I worked there for 2.5 years. And at some point took a break from that to do a competition and an exhibition from some stuff I'd done. And got a project, a small project. And Peter Eisenman went bankrupt. So he went bankrupt. It's not that drastic. I mean, he went bankrupt a few times, but then also. And he fired all the project architects, but I wasn't there. So actually, funny enough, theoretically, I still work for him. I'm on permanent vacation. But yeah, so I didn't go back. I got a small project for a gallery to design and build a gallery, or design and have it built. And got a teaching job. So that was it. And then I thought, better think of a name, looked at the Webster's, found architectonics, which means, by the way, the science of architecture, which I also like. I like to think that we're scientific. And called it architectonics. And I rented an office in a room full of architects, one desk for $150. Had no visa, so got my own green card as I didn't have money for a lawyer. Had to be inventive. Stuff. But it was really interesting. And, I was telling them, I had a lot of Dutch people calling me going like, so, you went to New York and you're there. So it must be really easy. How did you do it? And I was like, guys, just try it yourself and figure it out. I mean, it's really, it's probably complete. If I ever knew it, I think the message is if you ever knew what you had to do to get where you want to go, you wouldn't do it, but as you just bumble along, you get there somehow. So my message is don't think, just jump.
Please don't leave. We are going to announce the winner of the Outstanding Woman Architect Student Competition. We have the nominees for the graduate category, Vanessa Valeriano and Debbie Molina. Please join us here if you're here. Vanessa and Debbie, please. Congratulations for being nominated. We have Nadine Alvarez Gomez and Nicole Ibrahimian. Juniors, we have Stephanie Band and Katerina Paletichina. And sophomores, we have Sara Armanos and Gabriela Reyes. Students were nominated by faculty and students, and they will receive each of them $25, placed in their accounts to be used in any of the COA labs. Additionally, we have two categories. The winner that was chosen by students and the winner chosen by faculty. And each of them will have $50 deposited into their accounts. And all of them receive also a book, Women in Architecture.
Architecture, a woman's profession.
Additionally. And I'm ready to announce the winners.
Okay, so you do your reader? Yes.
Okay, so I have the honor to announce the winners. First, I want to congratulate all of you because it's an amazing thing to stand here.
Congratulations.
The student choice was Stephanie Bunt. And the faculty choice was Debbie Molina.
And then we have another actually surprise. A last minute surprise. The chair of instruction, myself, decided to give an award to another student among you. And I selected Caterina Panatichini.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we do that here.
You can do it now or later. You can do it right.
Sarah? Nicole? Nadine? Vanessa? Very good, congratulations.
So,
remember tonight is First Friday, so at Luca, and there's a student exhibition at Alderson Mercedes at 17th and Texas. That's the student watercolors and others stuff, interesting stuff. Will be at Alderson's. Lahib has her exhibition at Luca tonight, and we have land arts also at Luca tonight, and so lots going on. Everybody have a great evening and weekend, and see you all on the other present is we'll see you all on Tuesday.